latest episode of the Moviescramble podcast. I'm sure that our dear listener has been worried as to our whereabouts, given that we've not podded in a little while, but the gang is all back together again, and we're going to be discussing the blockbuster Top Gun Maverick on this pod. It seems fitting to come back with a bit of a bang. And as I said, all the gang is here, Simi and John. How are you both?
I'm good, yeah. Keeping the beat, as most people have been doing. Had COVID, still a bit knackered, but apart from that, I've managed to retain my good looks, so that's at least a plus. That hasn't deserted me, but I've just found, looking my timeline and various things in the last couple of days, there's been about 4 or 5 people that have caught it, so it's a bit rampant again. So apart from that, I'm good, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as long as our editor-in-chief is okay. And I think that's the thing, like, COVID would never, like, it may well ravage other people, but it knows when it entered the body of John MacArthur that no shit was to be pulled. That hair, those schoolboy good looks. We'll cut that bit out. Anyways, Simi, you've also had COVID, but you are also recovered.
Yeah, I think I'm actually mostly fully recovered, or near enough, but yeah, pretty much like John, it kind of left me tired and fatigued for weeks afterwards. I've stopped coughing in the morning, which is good. But yeah, it's that. It really is not good. I would not recommend anybody catching it. I would not think of it as, it's just a wee daft flu or anything like that, because as much as the flu was actually worse, I recovered for the flu quicker than I did this. This wasn't as bad as the flu, but it lasted longer in terms of trying to recover from it.
Yeah, I do feel like I almost feel like, not that I've missed out because I've not caught it, but I do feel quite odd that still after all this time, because I'm still seeing people just now catching it again, that I was on several planes, however, obviously masked up.
So you're like COVID maybe?
Maybe I am actually just immune to it. Maybe actually it's me that's the cure.
Or the cause.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. You have to look at both sides of the coin.
I was going to say that's totally fair. I'm from Glasgow after all. So as I've said, on our pod, we are discussing Top Gun Maverick.
What do we have here? Yeah, here I thought we were special.
Fellas, this here's Bagman.
Hangman.
Whatever.
What the hell kind of mission is this?
Everyone here is the best there is. Who the hell are they going to get to teach us?
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell. Let me be perfectly blunt. You are not my first choice. You are here at the request of Admiral Kazansky, a.k.a. Iceman. He seems to think that you have something left to offer the Navy. What that is, I can't imagine.
With all due respect, sir, I'm not a teacher. Just want to manage expectations.
Which came into cinemas in May of this year after several delays. The plot of which is pretty simple. You know, for more than 30 years, Pete Maverick Mitchell hasn't progressed beyond the rank of captain because he doesn't want to do a desk job because he still has the need for speed. There's loads of Top Gun puns coming your way this episode, so just keep listening. In this particular film, he's got a really dangerous new mission and he has to return to Top Gun, where he has just 3 weeks to whip a bunch of pilots into shape whilst confronting his past. So, John, does Top Gun still manage to take your breath away?
Lovely, well done. It does, yes. It's a worthy sequel to the original. When you go back and look at the original, it is a bit ropey in places, I must say. And this is a bit of a spoiler for a film that was made in the mid-80s, but there's an ending tacked on to the film which had nothing to do with the rest of the film. The whole film was they graduate from Top Gun, and then they thought, wait a minute, we've got 20 minutes. Let's create a whole other bit. So this film was far more cohesive. There was a start, a middle, and an end, and it all joined up. It was spectacular, obviously, because technology's come a long way, and I did a bit of reading about how they actually put the film together and all that, and they were actually flying or they were actually in planes and everything. So it was far better in terms of coordination and all that. But yeah, it was a spectacular movie. It's a summer blockbuster. And I think you have to sort of gauge it on that. You're not going to take it as a totally serious film and tear holes in it that way. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Saw it last night, and it was really, really good. It was a very, very good experience.
So I think you've just talked up to Tom Cruise's pocket money, because I believe it's now surpassed 800 million at the box office and will probably hit $1 billion, long before the summer. Simi, what were your sort of initial thoughts upon watching it?
Well, I have to confess, with regards to the first Top Gun, that I am not the biggest fan of it. I think it was one of those films that maybe if I seen it when I was younger, almost seen it for the first time about 6 years ago, I thought it was fine for what it is, but I don't know, I just, compared to other films of that style from that era, I've always found Top Gun pretty average. So I didn't feel the need for a sequel, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant from start to finish. I was just smiling the entire time. And as much as I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the first one, I really bought it in the nostalgia that they managed to incorporate.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done. I think that, like, because I'm with you. I actually think the first Top Gun's actually, it's quite a terrible film. It's really cheesy. It's really over the top, and I don't know, I felt like I had a lot more bought into this one. And I think the fact that obviously this starts, with a kind of opening scene that's almost a kind of shot for shot remake straight away. You are sort of, I barely made the 80s. I only made the last 3 months, but I did feel this sort of overwhelming rush of nostalgia for the original. And there's lots of little touches throughout that allows you to sort of get involved. And in fact, do you know what? Even if you've not seen the first one, I still think you could go into this and it still feels like an 80s movie in a way.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's talk about the first one being really cheesy and over the top. So is this, to be fair, but it's done better. But I think the key point you mentioned there, the fact that you're a lot more invested this time. There doesn't seem much substance to the first one, and that's not a criticism because there's lots of films I like with no substance whatsoever that I find really enjoyable.
No.
With Top Gun Maverick, though, I was really caring for the characters. There was some people I didn't want to die. As predictable as it was, I still cheered in my head at the end, and it was just so enjoyable. And you said, John, that's a great summer blockbuster. It's exactly what you want from a summer blockbuster. This is big, action-packed thrill ride. It's a great cinema film as well.
Yeah, I think that's just to touch on you saying it's a cinema film. Tom Cruise obviously has quite famously during his press junkets, said that he really campaigned for this to delay its release and, have a cinema release as opposed to an at-home release. Was he right for sticking to his Top Guns? I'm really sorry.
Well, he's in the business now of making cinema films. He's not in the business of just making films. Everything that he's got on his slate next to Mission Impossible films and all that, they're big, spectacular blockbusters. So he's wanting them to be seen on the big screen because that's what they're made for. With this film, a lot of it was filmed using IMAX cameras, which won't come across the same way when you're watching it at home, no matter how big your television is. It is a big screen experience. It's something that you want to see. It's an event. That's what it's, it's an old-fashioned event film, which it doesn't make any... It doesn't try and hide that in any way. It's got no allusions to being serious art. It's a big fun film that everybody can watch, and you could quite literally go away and have a coffee for 20 minutes and come back and not really have missed any of the plot.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
But the same token as like jump out for a wee tea breaker there, a tea break at your peril, because there's so much happening action-wise that you're kind of glued to your seat for a good whack of it. And it's funny we kind of mentioned and saying that this is like a cinema film, and Tom Cruise is in the business really now of making these big blockbusters. If you were to say this is a cinema film, even like 10 years ago, people always felt like Jean-Luc Godard and all these like really high-class, highbrow art cinema pieces, but no, because I could watch that in the house and it wouldn't be much different. Cinema films to me are these big blockbusters that are just great sound, great picture quality, massive screen. You just really immerse yourself in it.
Absolutely, I agree. I think actually it's funny what you're saying about you're kind of stuck to you felt like you couldn't leave your seat. It was almost like I was creating my own 4DX experience. I felt like I was like pushing back in my seat when they were, taking off or whatever. You were kind of gripping on to things. It was quite, it's a sort of visual spectacular, isn't it? That's definitely what it's going for. And I think it's meriting from lots of repeat viewing. People that I know are on viewing number 3, 4, 5. And certainly my husband is desperate to get back and see it again, being a big Tom Cruise fan. I think one of the things that this film gets right actually is the sort of continued characterization of Maverick in particular, because he is the character we're most familiar with out of everyone in the cast here. I think that he just about gets away with still playing the sort of cocky rebel, given that he is pushing 60. But I thought that the sort of wider cast in general worked really well. All of the pilots have all got their own kind of stories. But if we focus on Maverick to start with, obviously with him being the star of the show, did you feel like his character had evolved? Do you feel like he, how much is this a Tom Cruise film as much as it's about the group of pilots, I guess?
His character has changed in that he realises what age he is. He's not trying in the same way to be the same guy he was 30 years ago. You can tell that in the sort of initial scenes when he's dealing with the hierarchy, when he's speaking to them, when he's getting dressed down by the Ed Harris character, for instance. He doesn't come across as being the total young, cocky pilot that he was. He has a certain amount of respect for the job and for the position and all that, and he doesn't argue the toss with them. He kind of just accepts, because like it's not really giving anything away by the fact that like he's almost out the door in the first 10 minutes anyway, just because of his behaviour, which is very straight out of the 1980s film as well. But he almost reacts like he knows his time's quite close, because he's been doing this for so long. You know, there's only so many times you can batter your head against authority and get away with it, and I think he's kind of past that. But yeah, and he's evolved in that way, but he hasn't evolved in the way that he's a bit unsure about himself as well, because he's been brought in to train all these pilots, and he says, I'm not a teacher, you know, don't know anything about it, you know, and so that's like a challenge for him that he probably didn't want in the first place. But yeah, I think he has changed. It's a bit of a mixture. Yeah, you still get to see him without his shirt on, and he still looks pretty fucking good for a guy who's nearly 60, let's face it. But yeah, you get that, but you only get a wee bit of that, and then the others are left to go.
Yeah, it's definitely not as gratuitous. Yeah,
halfway through that whole sequence, touch football sequence, he goes and sits down and puts his shirt on, you know, while the rest of them are all bathing in the lowering sunlight and all this, and you know, water's glistening off their abs. Apart from the females who are dressed appropriately, I must say.
Yes, there was actually representations. One of the things I will sort of come on to, but I really appreciate it. Like whoever it was in the script who decided, you know what, we need Glenn Powell with his shirt off, running up and down a beach, playing some touch football. So if that was you're looking like Chris McQuarrie, I'm very, very appreciative of that. I think the big thing as well for Maverick is also the sort of countering of his relationship with Iceman, and how that's changed over the years. And you know, we're going to go into spoiler territory actually, but the presence of Val Kilmer in this film and sort of reiterating that character, I thought was so well handled, so emotional. It did get me very, very teary to see it. And actually it brought a new dynamic to their relationship, because you could kind of see echoes of their relationship with sort of Miles Taylor's character and Glenn Powell's, you know, that they're sort of facing each other off. There's clearly two factions in the camp there. So actually to see their relationship has evolved over the years, and Iceman's almost like kind of looking out for him in a kind of fatherly way and making sure his career's okay. You know, what did you think of that and that sort of small appearance from Val Kilmer as well?
I absolutely loved it. Again, going to spoil territory here. Apologies, people have not seen it, but yeah, Val Kilmer does make an on-screen appearance that I didn't know. I don't know if that was widely reported or not, but I didn't know if he was going to be in the film or not. I know he was mentioned at the beginning, and that spectre of him, for lack of a better term, is kind of hanging over the film. And when you do see him make an appearance, it is really emotional. And let's be honest, that's because of how Val Kilmer is in real life. It's very close to the bone. It feels very real because of that. It's a very authentic scene. I can imagine if Tom Cruise had emotions, that'd be quite an emotional scene.
What a statement.
Please don't sue me. But no, I thought obviously there's limitations to what you can do with Val Kilmer based on his health issues in real life, and that scene was so well done, and it showed how much their relationship evolved between the films and the time we haven't seen. And it evolved the way you'd imagine it to have done. You imagine the idea of them becoming really good friends. But also Val Kilmer becomes a family man. Maverick's still just that loner kicking about, and he gets that chance of redemption here because he's got the father figure almost in the Admiral Iceman, who's always kind of looking after him. And now he's having to play the kind of pseudo father for Rooster. And he still feels that responsibility for Goosey's death in the first film, and obviously Rooster doesn't just blame him for that, but more the fact he's been holding his career back because he's trying to be doing what's right for him, and then we find out later on why he's been doing that, and there's a lot of drama involved, and it's really well written and really well done. And going back to the earlier point about the evolution of Maverick, I find the film bridges it really well, because at the beginning of the film you see him testing that plane, and he gets to Mach 10, and he looks at the dial and he thinks, I could do more here. And you think, that's just Maverick, just pushing himself. But then the rest of the film, we see him kind of mature more into the father-like figure, not just for Rooster, but the rest of the recruits, when he's trying to basically just keep them as safe as possible. He's very protective of them. And as you mentioned, this could have easily been the Tom Cruise show. I mean, the film's called Maverick, but it's not. It is more of an ensemble piece. And I didn't even really think about that in regards to the touch football scene, but the fact that he takes a step back and just sits and watches it, it was a really nice wee touch. It was almost symbolic.
Yeah, because Tom Cruise wasn't knackered. Like that, that's the thing. Like, he wasn't giving up because he was like, I'm bailing myself out. So yeah, no, I think that the ensemble piece, I think, really worked well for me. I think the addition of the new characters, you've obviously got, Hangman, who's like, the cocky blonde all American boy. You've got Rooster, who's dealing with his familial issues and his past. You've got Phoenix, who obviously is a Latino woman, which was, I thought the representation across the sort of wider cast was a lot better than the sort of white bro movie that the original Top Gun was. And obviously you have Bob, who was by far and away one of my favourites. I didn't realise actually that Lewis Pullman is Bill Pullman's son. I don't know why I didn't join those dots, because they actually look really alike. But I thought there was just really nice, fleshed out characters. Even though they probably didn't have loads of time on screen, you understood immediately what the dynamic was like, who liked who was working well together. And I thought the group sort of worked really well. But I think in terms of casting, certainly, I mean, obviously there's nobody there who's not part of the Body Beautiful, but I thought in terms of certainly optics of casting, it was a lot more representative than the first Top Gun movie, which is very white bros, I guess.
Yeah, and it managed to do it very naturally and very organically. And I reason I say that because it doesn't seem very backlash regarding it. Because you always get that, they're just casting people for the sake of it. It's ridiculous because what's wrong with representation on screen? And they've managed to do it in a way that nobody's even batting an eyelid, which is surprising because you know how little it can be. Yeah,
no, I agree. I in a way, that's when, because I went to see it having only seen maybe one or two trailers, and when I saw how, I'm not saying it's super diverse, but it was definitely more diverse than the first film, I was like, I am surprised nobody has accused this film of some sort of shoehorning or whatever. But it was really natural, and obviously reflective of the actual armed services, as they are. So maybe that's why there's no issue.
I like the scene where they were all kind of introduced in the bar and they were playing pool, and you just got them casually introduced each other and all the dynamics were all worked out. And then Bob was sitting there in stealth mode. I thought that was really funny.
That was really brilliant. That was really well done.
But that scene in itself is a testament as well to how well written and directed this film actually is, because you've got all these new characters, you don't know who they are.
Yep.
You got to see the film because it's Top Gun Maverick. He's Tom Cruise is in it. We don't know his character. We don't know who else is going to be in it. We don't know how much overlap was going to be. But you introduce all these new characters, and they managed to do it in one scene without it being forced.
Yeah, and a scene that causes you to be ultimately invested in these, as you said to me earlier on, you don't want anyone to die. The more they go into how complicated this mission is, you are like, oh fuck, no one's coming back. John Hamm's character Cyclone has said, nobody, there's going to be at least one person not coming back from this, or two people not coming back from this. But the more you get to know them, sort of even just from that first scene, you are kind of like, no, I don't want any of you to die. I like all of you a lot. And I think John Hamm did the best he could with his character as well. I think it was a bit of a thankless task, because it's almost like he's the sort of Debbie Downer on, Tom Cruise's, really cool, fun instructor or whatever. But I actually think he made the character a little bit sassy, a little bit snappy, and it made it more than I imagine it was probably quite two-dimensional on first read.
No, I agree, and that's the thing, that he was on paper, a very stereotypical character, that hard-ass, by-the-book admiral who's not going to take any rubbish for the cocky Maverick and things like that, who thinks he's above the Air Force and stuff. But he managed to make him also more likeable than you thought it would be when he first came out of the screen, because it gave him more depth than he really needed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with this film, I thought, in general, there was so much depth and substance. You're watching it going, is this a Top Gun sequel? Or have they just made this brand new film and called it Top Gun for branding purposes? I've never seen a film where the sequel has been so far superior to the original. I've seen films, obviously, where the sequel's been great. You watch Aliens, for example, Godfather Part 2. I'm sure we'll discuss these later. But with this, you're going, this isn't just a better film than the first one. This isn't just more enjoyable. It's a much better film in every single aspect, from the acting to the characters to the everything about it's just better. Yeah. To the point you think, this doesn't even merit a sequel, let alone this good.
Yeah, it almost could have been its own standalone thing. I definitely think that the caliber of the script in particular is one thing that we can talk about. I thought there was a couple of cheesy moments, like I won't lie, the Tom Cruise, Jennifer Connelly sort of rolling into bed 80s montage was a little bit sickening, and I don't think it needed it. But I actually thought the quality of the script overall was much better. And as I say, even these kind of sort of secondary tier characters were much more developed. But obviously, I mean, we can't talk about it without talking about how much better the aerial sequences were than the first film. The first film obviously relied quite heavily on special effects. This is mind-blowing. Like, there is genuinely, seemingly nothing that Tom Cruise won't risk his life for, and it is absolutely stunning, the combat sequences. They are really, really well executed.
Yeah, the main difference between this one and the original Top Gun is the sequences are all kind of cohesive here. You know what's going on at all times. There's a through story. You know where all the aircraft, the action is happening and how it's all evolving. Whereas the first one just seemed to be, they kind of brought it together in the edit and just kind of shoved everything that they could fit. Apparently they didn't have an awful lot of footage in the first one, and they just kind of just jumbled it all together and made it look as good as it possibly could, and obviously worked. But this one is so much better. It's so well choreographed, the whole thing. And I mean, it's very exciting. I mean, the first big aerial scene that you get is when he's training them for the first time, the first day of training. And that was just fantastic, because you were right in there with them, and obviously there was stakes involved in that, 200 push-ups, that kind of thing. But it really, really worked. I was very, very impressed by that. And from there, that's just like, it's like you're on a roller coaster and you're just going, whoa, how are they going to top this? And obviously they just keep it going and keep it going. There are wee dips, as you say, when there's like the love interest and all that, or the unnecessary love interest. But, you know, you have to have that. So when you get to these points again, you're thinking, yeah, spot on. Yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, John, it's when you watch the action sequence, you keep thinking, how are they going to top this? And I remember at one point I actually thought the film was going to end, and I would have been quite happy if it did. Then there was another half an hour of action scenes left, and I was like just blown away with the mission at the end. I mean, this is amazingly done. So well done.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the first, when he's training them and he's like, you're dead, you're out. That was, I loved that, like how funny it was, as well as how exciting it was. And you're right, I thought it was, it was so good. And then it was just like, oh, not again. And then you were basically just watching them through a rotation. It was so good. But you're right, I thought the film was going to end as well. And all of a sudden they were back up in the air, and I was like, holy shit, there's still more to come here. Did you read the story of, like, obviously Tom Cruise knows how to fly a plane. He made all the pilots in the film go through training. Did you hear the story about Miles Teller, where he came out in this weird rash and he couldn't work out what was causing it? So he went to the doctors and got bloods done. And he came on set the next day and said to Tom Cruise, like, oh, I've had my bloods done. And Tom was like, oh, what did they find? And he said, oh, well, it turns out I've got like jet fuel in my blood. And he said, yeah, I was born with it, kid. How cool is that?
That's amazing.
Is that not the coolest story you've ever heard?
Speaking of Miles Teller, that was incredible casting.
Oh, he's phenomenal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and the caterpillar on his top lip, I thought that was spot
do you know,
on acting.
They look so alike. I actually thought, I said to Chris, because obviously I hadn't seen Top Gun in a number of years, but when they showed you the quick flashback, I was like, oh my God, he's his double. Like, that was perfect casting.
It was, but if you look at them, they don't really look alike. But in real life, I mean, like, just in general, you wouldn't think you wouldn't compare to them. But his mannerisms and stuff, he managed to get the right parts down without just emulating him, which is very difficult to do. I imagine it's a lot easier for an actor to emulate somebody than emulate parts of them to come across like a relative. That must be a lot more difficult to do, and I thought he got it spot on.
Yeah, even the lovely little tribute over there singing "Great Balls of Fire" in the back. I was like, this is so cool, and it's so well done. And like I said, it's done in a way that even if you haven't seen the first Top Gun film, it's very clear what's going on, and there's a little bit of reminiscence going on there. So I think it is really well executed. I think Miles Teller he makes good, interesting choices. Like, I think we've seen he's coming into that Spiderhead that's coming onto Netflix as well. He makes really cool career choices. I think he's quite an interesting actor to watch.
I think after Fantastic Four, he had to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I deleted that from my memory. Sorry. Yeah, I
He's
think
had quite a checkered career, though, to be honest, because he was supposed to do La La Land.
So he was.
He was in line to do that, and he
that's
decided
right.
not to do it because he'd done Whiplash before that, and he was in line to do it, and then he says, "No, I'm not doing it." And I don't know if he'd fallen out with the director or what, but
Oh, right, okay.
And then obviously it was Fantastic Four, so yeah.
He's phenomenal in Whiplash as well.
Yeah.
It's a great film. It's fun to talk about Fantastic Four briefly. A few of the actors from that managed to kind of bounce back. Obviously, Michael B. Jordan didn't do him much harm. Katie Mara, I can't remember the last time I seen her. And Toby Kebbell never really recovered from it, unfortunately.
The Curse of the Fantastic Four. I think
That's
what
kind
it
of
is.
interesting video I'll send you on if you're interested to kind of making of the production of it, and it just says a total nightmare.
I wonder what it's like, because obviously, I mean, the thing with this is like I feel like there's some films as an actor when you're on set you must know you're on to a good, and like it must be really high production value. So what do you do when you're in the middle of a film and you're just like, this is shit? Like, you must get a sense of this is not going to go well, when you're filming it. But I think to circle back on Miles Teller really quickly, obviously Tom Cruise, massive box office draw, charisma by the bucket load. I think Taylor really holds his own actually when they're acting together, and their scenes together are actually really nicely done. I think the dramatic scenes they have together are really, really good.
What interesting is regarding that, you talk about the evolution of Maverick. What about the maturity of Tom Cruise and the fact that he's playing to his height in this film?
Do you mean they didn't? Because for for Kelly McGillis, they want dug holes for her to stand in. Is that correct? Yeah. So they've cast him within not only an age-appropriate love interest, but a height-appropriate one as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's scenes in this film where you see like Miles Teller, for example, just towering over him, but I didn't even bat an eyelid watching it. But actually, after I read, I didn't even think watching it. I think that's another testament to how much you're invested in it. You're not picking up with things like that, but after it, we're saying, no, it's actually a lot of fans were noticing the fact that Tom Cruise is a lot shorter in this film than he usually is in films. I thought, it's interesting.
Well, it's when they were talking to each other before they were going out on one of the training flights, and they were standing there talking, and nobody else could hear them because of the jet noise, and you got that shot of them, and there was a height difference, and I was thinking, Miles Teller must be about 5'6" or 5'7".
I know, because actually they had John Hamm sitting down a lot, and I think he must be about 6 foot, so they had him sitting down talking to him quite a lot. And now that you've said that, I'm like thinking throughout the film, because that Glenn Powell must be quite tall as well. Jennifer Connelly must be on a par with him. Yeah. I didn't really, so I couldn't. One thing that did annoy me about the film, as it were, is I couldn't work out who she was meant to be from the first film, and it wasn't until afterwards when I came out and did a bit of reading that I realised that her character obviously wasn't in the first film at all. I got a bit confused, I must admit.
No, that was just something that happened in the intervening years. They'd obviously had this relationship with her. You said about the sort of the sex scene between them, it was very tame, obviously, and he was shirtless and she wasn't actually in that scene. And then I think that scene was necessary because when he left afterwards, he saw her daughter, and she says, like, don't break her heart again. And that kind of like led into sort of more mature Maverick. It's something he probably wouldn't have done. He'd have just walked away before if he was younger, but now he's a bit older now, and he's a wee bit more responsibility, a wee bit more, thinks a bit more about things. So in that way, yes, it was necessary. In the way that it was done, it was a bit daft.
It was a bit like almost like, you know how like they always pick up on this like cheesy 80s film. It's just like people start kissing and then the camera pans out the window or pans to a roaring fire. It was like unexpected. And now the film is quite cheesy and quite hyperbolic, but that really stood out to me as being so like overtly cringy. I don't know why. It's probably because, I mean, when was the last time Tom Cruise actually did like a love scene, if you want to call it that? He doesn't really do them these days.
No.
Maybe that's...
No, I'm trying to think. No.
Maybe that's why I found it about cheesy. Yeah. Anyways, I mean, it was the one thing that kind of stuck out as sort of a bit cringy. What I did love in particular, and I've been playing it all morning, is the score. I thought the score was really well done. I love that, they've got elements of Zimmer in there. Lauren Balfe, who obviously does the Mission Impossible films, was the musical supervisor. And of course, you have that Lady Gaga banger as well that's played a couple of times. They had like cello versions of Danger Zone. So like, I just thought it was so, it was amazing. It blended the music from the first movie, with these kind of new updated songs as well. I thought it was really well done. That kind of nice blend.
Yeah, I can't take Danger Zone seriously at all because
He's supposed to.
I don't know if you watch Archer, the
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
animated, and that's
Yes.
it's in that all the time. You know, when he's
Yeah.
trying to get people to go into the danger zone all the
Yes.
time, and just
Yes.
because of that, it's just every time it comes on, that's all I think of. I just think of. I don't think of Top Gun. I think of Archer. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. Tell you something, Kenny Loggins was a clever guy, eh? A wee song for Top Gun, a wee song for Footloose, and I bet you that guy's never had to work again in his
Yep.
life.
Just sat back, put his feet up, and retired in the 80s.
That's absolutely brilliant. But no, I did really appreciate the music as well. And I actually really like the Lady Gaga song. I think it kind of sounds like a song from an 80s movie. I think, again, to go back to the kind of nostalgia element of this, I think it executes it all really well. And it, in a way, although it's a really obvious update of a film that was actually not that great, it feels like an 80s movie to me when you watch it. I just think it's really well done.
Oh yeah, I mean there's not a lot of sensitivities regarding it in terms of America, Team America versus the world type idea.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so
No, I know.
They don't mention the enemy by name in terms of a country, which I think actually, I know it was poster of North Korea, but I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad the film is just got its nameless enemy because it's just good guys versus bad guys. It's old school.
Yeah, because I had obviously asked you guys about that because it did kind of, I was like, oh, it seems weird that they're not, saying a specific country. And I was wondering, is that to avoid, getting the movie banned in certain countries, or were they thinking about political sensitivities that have happened since the film has obviously been wrapped up? But I think, as one of you guys said to me, don't actually mention it in the first film either. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of implied that it's the Russians, but apparently some fan theories kind of try to join a lot of dots. From even the insignia and the plane and things, do believe it's more likely North Korea in the first film with China, with Chinese sympathies, which obviously you couldn't have now if you want to film in China.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the fact that, especially the fact that in the first one they're nameless and this one they're nameless, even when you see the pilots now, they've got masks, they're not real people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They almost look like bugs. They're just kind of faceless, sort of. Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's perfectly fine because that's a pure throwback to these kind of 80s action films where bad guys are just cannon fodder.
Yeah. It doesn't detract from the film in any way that the enemy isn't named.
Yeah, I don't want to see the enemy talking about how their country was bombed by Americans in the 80s and they've got a family and they're just trying to do their stuff. I don't want to care about them. I'm interested in anyway.
Yeah. You're just here to care about Bob and make sure that he makes it all the way to the end. I've never sympathised with a character more in my entire life. He just looked so awkward, so out of place, and so just not part of the cool kids. It's like, I'm Bob. So obviously this is a supermassive sequel. Do you see any sort of Rooster sequels happening, or do you think this is it for Top Gun?
It'd be difficult.
Yeah, I think it's that.
Yeah, I can't see it somehow. That they could engineer some sort of story and take it with Rooster being the lead character, but will it have the same pull? I don't think about it. But I suppose they would need to bring Maverick into it at some point as an advisor or whatever, but I don't think it would work as well. And you've got to remember, Mr. Cruise is getting on in years, and this would be, I wouldn't see that even if they started it now, it would be 4-5 years down the line, because he's got a couple of Mission Impossible films to get out of the way first. So
that's true. However, he doesn't have a single grey hair and appears to still have a six-pack, so I doubt that age would deter him much. But I think that, I think the story's pretty much wrapped up. I'm just amusing because I saw something on Twitter the other day of somebody demanding that Rooster get his own sort of spin-off or whatever. But I think it's just, people are getting swept up in how popular this film obviously is just now.
I would argue the point against the Tom Cruise having grey hair, though, because see, with obviously high definition cameras and stuff like that now, his hair looked suspiciously dark for somebody of that age.
Do you think he's been Just for Men before?
I think, yep. There's been a little work done there, as well as on his face. There's been a little work done because you see the difference in him when they do some flashback stuff. He's starting to look a wee bit uncanny valley, he's like not like sort of superhuman type, it's not quite a normal person look anymore. He's not quite there, but he is getting there.
He's not quite the Bride of Wildenstein, but I do have a theory, because now he's kind of sporting that sort of Robert Redford choppy kind of longish. I'm convinced he's had a facelift, and obviously if you get a facelift, the scars are behind your ears. So I'm convinced he's grown his hair. I'm really sorry, Tom Cruise, if you're listening, please don't sue me. But I'm convinced that's why the hair's long, to cover up the fact that he's obviously, because there was a while ago, maybe towards the end of last year, but he was at some football game and he was seen looking really puffy, almost like post-surgery. And I think maybe you've had a wee nip and tuck, and that's why the hair's a bit longer.
Oh, definitely, yeah. You can tell there's been some work done. Because he used to have, he had a face that had character and there was lines and everything even when he was younger, but a lot of them have disappeared. There are no peaks and troughs on Tom these days. It's very smooth.
It's all that good, clean Scientology living, John. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. For the lawyers, for the Scientology lawyers that are listening, that was Mary who said that.
Yes, but
Mary's views no longer reflect the views of the rest of the Moviescramble
podcast. No longer reflect.
Oh, I meant to say, I thought of you guys last night. I went into Tesco to pick up some shopping, and they had a Father's Day display, and I went to take a picture and send it to you because all it was like Berlin and like war books and stuff like that, and I was like, am I a Father's Day?
Just imagine, actually, like if you're watching the film, you're like, oh, the fact is this nameless enemy, and then you read something, it's actually supposed to be Germany, and you're like, I'm done.
Ripping up my tickets like never again. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to add about our obviously enjoyment of Top Gun Maverick?
Just a wee thing that actually talk about kind of potential spin-offs and that. I don't see them making another film, even like a Brewster film, regardless how much fun this film makes. I wouldn't be surprised if they had some sort of animated series on Netflix.
Oh, but I mean, Paramount Plus is due to launch in the UK, and obviously I'm pretty sure Top Gun is owned by Paramount Studios, so maybe there's
something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they said something like that, because budget-wise, you could just do what you want with the planes, and I don't know. I just get a mind there when we're talking about it.
Yeah, I definitely think that animated would be the way to go, since Cruise seems particularly passionate about having live-action features in the cinema. Like during his press tour, he mentioned it a million times. He said he goes to the cinema in person at least once a week. He watches a film every single day. He's very passionate about cinematic releases, and as I said before, it's quite clear in the stunts, etc., that they pull off on this. But I just wondered, as I say, people are very caught up in this sort of Top Gun Maverick madness at the moment, and obviously Miles Taylor and Glenn Powell's character in particular seem to have, don't know why, caught people's attention, and I thought the idea of a spin-off or a sequel might be quite interesting.
It makes sense in the idea of this film's made close to $1 billion. It probably will make $1 billion, as you mentioned earlier, that there's no way they're going to let it lie, but at the same time, I just don't really know where. Don't get me wrong, the first one did merit it. I just don't see where this goes. It's a very nice, complete story.
Oh no, yeah. I agree. I'm just.
I wouldn't stop them. I suppose. I still can't see it for some reason. I can't see it.
I think you maybe can't see it without Tom Cruise. I think that's
what it is.
Yeah. There's a lot of already, just while I was scouring the internet, there's already a lot of very erotic fan fiction going out about Top Gun Maverick. So if you ever find yourself at a loose end, that's fun to look up.
That's slash fiction.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. But yes, as far as I'm concerned, it's a recommend from me. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'll probably go back and see it at the cinema. Again, it was just really good fun, and that, as you say, that kind of big sort of bombastic blockbuster sort of. It's not trying to be Oscar worthy. It's not trying to be anything sort of above its ideas, whatever. It's just pure popcorn fodder in the best way possible. Do you guys recommend it? Take it? Yes.
100%.
Yeah, totally. And I was very pleased that they didn't do the "No, you can be my wingman." But again, I thought that would have been like smelly cheese at that point if we'd done that. But yeah, I definitely recommend it.
It'd be even worse if we'd done "You can be my wing person."
When did Simi become the politically correct voice of this podcast?
Yeah. COVID times.
I was going to say, you've changed since you got those two strikes.
I can't recommend this film enough. It's one of those rare films as well that I don't know anybody in person. I see the odd idiot on the internet, but I don't know anybody personally that does not like this film. I have discussed it with people, and I thought, am I hyping this up too much? They went to see it and came back absolutely loving it. Nobody even came back and said it was okay, or yeah, I quite enjoyed it, but everybody's kind of absolutely mind blown. And it's something like that you take much scope. You take much faith in Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. It's like 97% for a film called for a Top Gun sequel, and 97% is pretty insane.
Who are the 3% who thought it was shit? That's what I want to know.
I thought I posted it in the group chat. It was somebody wrote a review in Letterboxd, just basically really slamming the film. It's a terrible review as well.
I mean, I have seen people accuse it of being sort of like almost like right-wing propaganda, like promoting the army, which
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's a fair point in terms of people watching and going, I'm going to join the Air Force because it does make the Air Force look really cool.
Yeah, apart from the fact it's the Navy they're in, but yeah. Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you know, see if the Navy want to start flying planes and call themselves the Navy, that's just on them for bad branding.
Their marketing has not been clear.
I'm going to join the Navy. What are you going to do? I'm going to fly a plane. What?
Well, that's all taken into consideration in the film as well, because there's a sailing sequence and he doesn't know how to sail a boat, and he says, I don't do this. I've joined the Navy, but I'm in a plane all the time, you know. So I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah.
See, this film doesn't leave any stone unturned.
Yep. It explains everything.
I do feel like they had someone sit and watch it and like make notes about any potential pitfalls. And now that you're saying that, I'm like, okay, you're going to have to add in a line about him being unable to sail boats, even though he's in the Navy. So, no, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It lived up to my expectations and then some. And as I say, I'm not really a fan of the original Top Gun. It's not a film that I look back on particularly fondly. I remember watching it at uni for the first time and thinking, this is a love story between two guys, right? This is what we're here for. We're here for Val and Tom getting on. Yeah, no. So I definitely feel like it was not even just an improvement. It almost, as you say, Sammy, it almost feels like it doesn't even belong to the first film at all. It's so good. So that's our thoughts on Top Gun Maverick. Feel free to get in touch with us and let us know yours. We're going to now talk about sequels that we've enjoyed or liked, and ones that we think have maybe done better than the original movie. Sammy, I feel like you're like the sequel king out of all of us. You've seen like part 14 of every horror franchise known to man. Is there any horror ones in particular that stand out to you, or are you going to go down this blockbuster route?
No, definitely. I mean, the horror ones were some of the first ones that came to mind. And because, as you say, there's so many parts of a lot of these franchises. And sometimes you'll get them just being diluted. Like the Saw franchise, for example. The first one, in my opinion, is the best. Second one's fine, but it just gets diluted for each one. Then you get something like Friday the 13th or even Nightmare on Elm Street, where it doesn't really take to a few films in before the franchise really kind of finds its feet. Halloween, I say, no much as an exception to that, because the first one is great and then it just really kind of falls off a cliff after two. Friday the 13th, for example, the first film, Jason Voorhees isn't even the killer. It takes to the third film for him to get his hockey mask. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take to the sixth film before he becomes the Jason Voorhees of popular culture that we all know. Mm-hmm. That's quite interesting in that aspect. Nightmare on Elm Street film, the first one's really good. That's more of a horror film, but it's the third one's probably the best. And that's more of the Freddy again, you know, from pop culture. Quite scary, but also quite wisecracking as well. But in terms of horror films and sequels, Maniac Cop 2 is probably one of my favourite sequels.
Does not expect you to say that.
Right, I mean, it's very, very easy to slag that, especially with the title Maniac Cop. The first film is what it is. It's a slasher. It's Michael Myers with a badge. They basically coined it as, and it's this cop back for the dead, just running rampant revenge through New York City. Then you get to the second one, and it's this noir thriller, this noir serial killer thriller, for lack of a better term. Stylistically, it's incredible to watch. It's a very, very good film, and also it's a very interesting dynamic where the undead zombie-style slasher teams up with a very real-life human serial killer. And that dynamic alone makes a very interesting viewing. But I'd say the actual look of this film, the noir aspect of it, really works. And there's a surprising lot of depth in this movie. Robert Davi is the lead, and his performance in the film is really good. And again, you're watching this going, this should be a really just daft, cheesy B-movie slasher. But it's actually very, very good. It's very well made. It's very well constructed.
Can I ask a stupid question? Why is it so different from in terms of quality and style and everything from the first one then?
Do you know, I actually did watch something from The Garden and I can't even mind. I'm pretty sure it's the same director and the same writers and that. I find they just went a different route. And I mean, the first one, a lot of the first one as well is filmed during the day, which is quite unusual for a horror film as well. And you've got this cop walking through the city, and you see the night sequences as well, because the idea is this, they try and obscure his face as much as possible, because in the first one, there's a big reveal of halfway through of who he really is. By the time the second one comes, they just hide his face quite a lot because the special effects aren't very good for his face. And the first one they are, and the second one not so much. But there's also a lot of practical effects in the second one as well that really still hold up, like setting him on fire and walking through the prison. There's a scene where they handcuff somebody in a car and they're hanging the door on the outside, and he puts the car in gear and just launches it down a hill. And you've got this car just hitting out of traffic with somebody hanging out of the side. It's some of the stuff still really holds up, but yeah, I can't remember why there was such a distinct difference in tone between the two movies, but they do everything about them is really different, including just the execution of them. It's still a slasher movie to an extent, but it's honestly, I would really recommend watching it. It's a very good film. It's one of those films that's much better than it deserves to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. I must admit, I kind of obviously chuckled when you said the title of the film, but it does sound a lot better than the title would suggest.
And Robert Davi is a great actor. I'm a big fan of him. Obviously a bit kind of cheesy 80s man at times, but he does play again that very stereotypical washed up cop, you know, kind of like not in really good terms with the force, with some psychological issues, and this, you know, he's just a very kind of disturbed individual. Again, do you really need a character with this much depth in a film called Maniac Cop 2? But it works, and just the cast in general were very good.
So again, another kind of silly question, like, do the people who really like Maniac Cop 1, do they still like Maniac? Like, because I feel like expectations have obviously changed wildly between the first two films in terms of the content that you're getting.
Maniac Cop 2 is considered the best out of the series by many people, fans, critics, whatever. Although they're very different in terms of style, a lot of people still think the second one is the better film. The third one, on the other hand, is not worth watching. It's awful. I have no idea what the hell they were doing. Actually, I do know, because it's directed by Alan Smithy, so I should tell you everything regarding the production of the movie. But at the heart of the film as well, it's just basically the revenge films. So as much as a slasher, it really kind of leans into this in the second one. I don't want to get too much spoiler in case you do watch it, but there's a very interesting moral centre as to why he's doing what he does. Although the execution of what he's doing is not necessarily a good thing. He's a very angry individual, and there's a reason for that, and it comes to a very satisfying conclusion and a very crazy stunt scene at the end of the second one.
Okay. And how many films are there in the franchise altogether?
3, and there's been talks of a remake for a long, long time, apparently, and I'll get his name wrong, but you'll correct me, Nicholas Winding Refn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. He's been attached to it for about the better part of a decade now.
Wow.
And trying to bring a new version to the screen. Last time I read about it, they're going to abandon the film idea and make it a TV series. And how they're going to do it, I don't know. I've heard some mixed reviews on how faithful it will be in terms of how much they're going to update it for current climate of how cops have been seen and stuff. But that's a hell of a name to be attached to it.
Yeah, I've actually just downloaded that We Own This City, the John Bernthal one that's written by the team behind The Wire. And actually, the reason I wanted to watch it is because obviously they're saying it's quite controversial with its portrayal of American cops. I think anything that goes out with the title Maniac Cop right now might be seen as quite sensitive almost, or controversial. And I really like, obviously, Nicholas Winding Refn, and I really like his work. So I think it'd be interesting to see what he did with it, because it would be... In my head, I'm thinking it'd be something quite art house, something quite stylistic, maybe elements of noir. And how does that fit into the kind of conversations we're having right now about, you know, police? It's fascinating. It sounds really. I hope it gets made.
Also interesting as well, regarding as much as this film, like I say, it's like a noir horror, and it works really well for it. And you've got this sort of serial killer element of this secondary character that isn't this undead, zombified cop. Is a very real life human person. Who speaks quite a lot. So scenes when the two of them are having conversations, but the Maniac Cop character doesn't speak. So it's just very one-sided. And this guy is basically quite insane and believes he's befriended them and has conversations himself, almost answering as if he's hearing them, because he's convinced he understands what's going through his head. It's a very complex character for this sort of film, and a very well-acted part as well.
Yeah,
but the
thing is, though, when you said the title, I was like, I won't lie, I was like, that sounds shit. It sounds a lot more complex and interesting and nuanced than the title of the film would suggest. So,
I mean, the first one is really enjoyable for what it is. It really is, but it is what it is.
I mean, if I watch this and it's like 80s cheese fodder and you've sold it as this, like, you know, stunning journey of self-discovery and all this sort of thing.
Yeah. Welcome to my world over the last few years when I've been getting, you should watch Wishmaster. This is, there's 4 of them, you know.
But even,
at least there's only 4. Usually it's like, it's 16 parts. Don't worry, the last one's shit.
We did 10 Hellraisers, so
that's
true. Just even setting like stills from the film, or even the posters. You could even tell by the posters have went from the 80s to the 90s. Even though it's 1990, it's still very early on. You can still see that kind of style of films have changed a little here. People are looking for a more gritty movie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I shall keep an eye out. It feels like one of those films that's probably on like the Sony channel or something every so often.
Both are on YouTube.
Oh, right. Okay. Solves that issue. John, did you have any sequels that you thought particularly stood out to you as being sort of better than the original, or worse, actually, is the case maybe?
No, well, I didn't go for worst. I went for ones that were slightly better. The obvious one for me was Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, which was miles better. The original film was a bit slow. It involved finding a satellite. That was the whole story, 2.5 hours. We found it, you know. But the second one, obviously, reintroduced the character of Khan, a rather well-tanned Ricardo Montalban, considering he was abandoned in a planet that had virtually no sun, and it was like sandstorms all the time. You're thinking, how does he get to be so brown? You know. Anyway, it's a more cohesive story. It's everything that was really good about Star Trek, and it kind of brought back a lot of the characters and everything, and it made it such that people would actually remember Star Trek fondly as compared with the first sort of snooze fest that was Star Trek: The Motion Picture, because that was just trying to do a Star Wars, but doing it in a more thoughtful way, and it was long and a bit dull, to be perfectly honest. So that was one, and I thought also it was a couple. I thought of Fast Five, obviously, when The Rock joined the franchise, because up until that point, I mean, you know my love for the Fast and Furious franchise anyway, but Fast and Furious, the 4th one, pretty good movie, brought everything back together, you know, the whole gang was back together. But Fast 5, Rio with the safe and all this, it was a next level, which they kind of haven't really hit again, as far as I'm concerned. They've got bigger and bolder, but it's never been that sort of jump where it is. And Paddington 2, the comedy one, I just thought Paddington was an excellent movie, but so Paddington 2 is so sort of above that, and partly to do with the fact that the bad guy in it's Phoenix Buchanan, Hugh Grant character, and he's just amazing in it. And it's just the fact that they don't have to do any sort of origin story for Paddington or anything. That's all been taken care of, so it's just the pure story, and it's really, really funny, you know, the whole prison sequence, and it's just spot on. Absolutely brilliant.
I haven't seen it. I watched Paddington at Christmas, and I thought Paddington 2 was on Netflix, but I think it's just come on to it, so I'm desperate to watch it because I loved Paddington so much. It's really worth it.
I want to. I've heard a lot about Paddington 2. I've heard a lot of people say it's really good. In fact, when Paddington 2 came out, it was Billy Kirkwood, the comedian I was following, and he was saying, I went to see Paddington 2, and then I realised the plot was he was stuck at an airport on Christmas Eve, and he was trying to help get a plane get landed because his wife's on it. And I'm just reading this at first going, that sounds like, oh, wait a minute.
I think it sort of fell in nicely to that. I don't know what because we had the McConaissance with Matthew McConaughey. I don't know what the Hugh Grant assance would be, but I feel like it kind of fell into that time where Hugh Grant was really just having a good time with the characters he was playing. You know, he was in The Gentleman and things like that. I kind of feel like it's sort of fallen into that particular era in his career.
Yes, when he stopped being the sort of typical upper class Englishman role, when he stopped really doing that, because he was still doing that like up to like Love Actually and About a Boy, he was still playing a sort of variation of that. But when he just decided to do something a bit different, and he's taken on, like, he was like Jeremy Thorpe, for instance, you know, and he's played that, and there was that drama with Nicole Kidman, which was last year or the year before, and he's aging now. He has got wrinkly. He does look a bit older. You can tell that if he has had any sort of work done, it's been very, very subtle. It's not in the same way. He is starting to look older, which I think is a a choice. It's like Robert Redford as well. He
Still
aged.
handsome.
Oh yeah. Still handsome, but you can tell he hasn't very much work done because he looks old and craggy now. But yeah, I mean, a good-looking man like that will still be a good-looking man, you know.
Just like you, John. To be honest with you.
No, I'm falling a bit. You're only seeing me from the shoulders up. Everything below that's just a dumpster fire.
Just touching the Fast and Furious bit, John, because I agree with you 100%. I would argue.
Why would you disagree with me? Fuck's sake.
Well,
I know you do love Fast and Furious.
I would say though it starts a bit more after 6. I thought 6 was great. I just kind of I thought 7 was okay. I'm at that point. I watched the 9th one, and I came away complaining about things that I enjoyed about earlier films. Because I think you can sometimes take the suspension of disbelief and the physics a bit too far.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very well saying, I'm not seeing these films for the realistic car stunts, but I'm expecting them to at least respect the laws of physics to a degree. The cars aren't limbs.
Was it you guys that was telling me something about magnets? Is this a real thing that's happened with Fast and
Yeah,
Furious?
that scene was actually quite good, to be fair. That scene was actually quite good.
I was pretty good, yeah. Aye,
but it's bits in space, and I'm thinking, that sounds good on paper, but...
Does it? Does it sound good on paper?
I think so.
But your very argument there, I think it's 6, where there's a scene, they're going to cross a big bridge, and Dom catches Letty in midair, and then he slams into the windscreen of a car and gets up, doesn't even go... Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a bit, you know, that's loosened it up a bit, you know. He just stands up and you're thinking, it would be mush.
There's a level of disbelief I'm willing to accept, but the scene in the 9th one when they hook the car onto the chain, then like bungee jump with it.
Yeah, aye.
I thought to myself, right, that doesn't even look like a good stunt. And that's the thing, I just can't find these films. I'm actually watching them going, they're actually quite dull.
I think it's like, it becomes a stage where, and I can't remember if it was you that told me this about the Mission Impossible films, where they come up with the stunts first and build the story around it. From what you've described in Fast and Furious, because obviously I've never seen any of them, it almost sounds like they're just like, want to see if we can fling a car off a bungee jump? Aye, sure, okay, let's go and shoot that today. It doesn't sound thought through.
Apparently that's not far from the truth. It's something to do with Vin Diesel's creative control, where he'll come up with an idea for a scene and then have to try and write it into the film. So he'll be sitting one day and go, I've had to go to space with the cars, and then they'll need to try and think how to do this. So there's a reason to make him approach really stupid in the film as well, because they're shoehorning stuff in.
Yeah, and you can tell he's just going onto fan sites and looking for ideas because
Vin Diesel's midnight runs on Reddit going, aye, that sounds quite good.
The next one will involve time travel because that's what everybody's been talking about. Or there has to be time travel in the next Fast and Furious film.
Oh, a multiverse. Multiverse, you go to some other universe where, like, I don't know, John Krasinski's playing Vin Diesel's kid, his Dom Toretto.
Yeah, or The Rock and Vin Diesel get along.
I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's like, you can imagine like the creative writers' room, and they're sitting going, let's put the cars in space. And like Vin Diesel going with it. Put Jason Voorhees in space, they put Pinhead in space, they put the Leprechaun in space. I want cars in space. Yeah. And you get the cars in space, and again, I'm quite happy to suspend disbelief to a point until they start blatantly just disregarding the laws of physics to the car flying through space because they're fucking stealing it.
Yeah,
things like that. I'm like, come on.
Which I think is
enjoyable at this point.
Because I think, especially because when you look at the stunts they achieved in Top Gun Maverick and look at the stunts they regularly achieve in Mission Impossible, now they're all physically possible because somebody is literally doing them. They're not CGI. You know, he is obviously throwing himself off buildings or climbing the Burj Khalifa or whatever it is. So I think that's where they get away with it, because there is this basis in reality that he is actually attempting it. But you're right, if it feels like it's just thought up on the morning of and then they're just sort of flinging shit at the wall and hoping something sticks, it's not great, is it?
I had a good point as well. And the Hobbs and Shaw film was bad for this. My mate summed this up perfectly. He said, we watched a trailer for Hobbs and Shaw and he went, is Idris Elba like a supervillain? I mean, what do you mean? He went, he seems to have enhanced strength. And is he taking some sort of serum that makes him... Is it, the first film, they were fucking stealing DVD players.
That's right.
And you had a cop go undercover to try and catch them within space, some kind of international spy gang.
How this franchise has evolved, that is James, I think that's brilliant.
It's essential. It's like watching. It's like Point Break turning into James Bond. A Mission Impossible. It's like Point Break becoming Mission Impossible 7.
I mean, when I was looking at sequels, Mission Impossible Fallout came up as one of my favourites. It absolutely is. Anytime we can get Henry Cavill shaking out his fists, I'm all for it. Some of the ones that I thought of as well were the Planet of the Apes sequel, the new Planet of the Apes sequels. They're fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I thought they were really good and worthy of it. Logan as well, I thought nice, craggy Hugh Jackman was really good. The Raid 2 also popped up because for that toilet scene alone, I think that's one of the best films ever made. But what I decided to settle on was nonsense, because I thought you guys will pick something really serious. So I went for 22 Jump Street, because I think that's brilliant. Honestly, every time I think of the poetry slam scene, I end up absolutely buckled, and I can pretty much recite it word for word. So I think what I really liked about this was, obviously, I mean, the characters are just like, they're just dumb, and they've evolved from going undercover in high school to going undercover in college, and there's the potential drugs ring, but then all of a sudden Channing Tatum with his giant neck realizes that he's really good at football, so he wants to be part of it. And then you've got, Ice Cube and the relationship between him and his daughter, and obviously, I've forgotten his name, that's terrible, Jonah Hill is talking about, he doesn't realise he's telling the captain that he's having sex with his daughter, and he's like, we're talking missionary. And I still think that's one of the, honestly, it just cracks me up. It's one of those films where I go back to the two of them actually time and time again, but 22 Jump Street in particular, for the poetry slam scene alone, it's just so funny. Like, there's nothing about it that's just not funny. And obviously it culminates in this big sort of spring break thing, and he's got the Sunset Guns Out t-shirt on, and there's the big showdown with the drug dealers and stuff like that. And there's not a single scene in it that doesn't absolutely crack me up. So I'd looked at serious choices, as I say, like the Raid 2 and Logan, and I thought, nah, fuck it, 22 Jump Street's brilliant.
They filmed as well. Again, it's that kind of just the perfect mix of the cast, the writing, to the directors. Everything just kind of comes together really nicely. And I always get the two of them mixed up in terms of overlap and what jokes in what films, but it's even just that really daft bit in the second one when they go to the police station and they've just moved it.
To number 22, yeah.
That's absolute genius.
It's so funny. And what I wish was, now at the end credits, they show like 23 Jump Street, Magic School 24. I'm like, make these films. They would be so good.
That actually annoyed me, because I'm watching this going, don't tease me with this.
Yeah, I want, and I can never remember which one it is. The one where he says, I thought you said we could have Kate Blanchett, and he's like, I said you could have Carte Blanche.
Carte Blanche.
So yeah, I dismissed all the serious choices and thought that was absolutely hilarious. But again, it's one of those films where, I mean, it was based on an 80s. I don't know how big Jump Street was as a TV show in the 80s. Certainly, it seems to be more of an American thing. But again, it just sort of picked up at the right time and just sort of got rid of all the cheesy bits and just went for it as a full-on sort of comedy. And it just really, really worked.
It's an interesting sell, and they're saying we're going to remake 21 Jump Street for the big screen, but we're not going to do it seriously.
Yeah, because it was because Johnny Depp was in the TV series originally, So
that's right. Yeah.
And then they tried it with other things like Chips and Baywatch and stuff, and just did not have the same impact.
Chips was a horrible film.
I've not seen Chips. I started watching Baywatch when it was on TV one night, and I thought, you know what, life's too short. Not even Zac Efron can say this.
It's not a good film.
No,
it's a shame, because they've got a really good cast, and you think this should have worked if. And they try to do the same 21 Jump Street like parody aspect of it, and it just doesn't work at all. It's not a good film.
Yeah, whereas the Jump Street films, I feel like, as I say, they've got it really right. And as I say, every time I watch 22 and they've got all the, magic school and chef school and all this, I'm like, please just make them. This is what I need in my life. And so many people talked about Top Gun Maverick as coming along at the right time and giving people a boost and leaving people, smiling when they're watching it and like leaving the cinema almost feeling sort of uplifted. Jump Street's one of those films that I always find myself like really cheesy grinning at. Like, it just makes you feel sort of good. So more Jump Street, please, for all of the Hollywood executives who are obviously listening to our podcast.
Yeah, just Channing Tatum signed up for life, and just always going to do from now on is 21 Jump Street films.
Yeah, Jonah Hill can occasionally go off and do the serious stuff because he is really good at that as well. But Channing Tatum tied into Jump Street for life.
Have you seen Lost City, the
Yes.
Channing Tatum film?
Oh no, is that good?
He's very good in that. He's like he's a cover model on these adventure books, and he's really funny. His comic timing is just spot on. Just
I really
so
want to
good.
see that.
Don't give too much away.
Well.
But
So we saw the trailers for it, and for some reason we missed it. I think we were either going away or something. I can't remember, but it does look really good. And I think he's someone who I think is obviously aware of how he could have been perceived as this sort of like meathead type of just like muscle guy. And I think he really, really plays around with that persona, which I think is quite self-aware. And obviously,
have you seen Free Guy?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
There's a cameo in that, and his cameo is really, really funny. Again,
yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Playing up the movie.
Well, I really liked the reappearance that he made in Hail Caesar, because again, that was a sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink to the camera, because obviously there's been rumours about him for a wee while, and they've got him dressed up as a sailor, so I think that was quite funny.
The whole song and dance number, and that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so good, yeah. Because obviously he's a dancer. So it's very good that. But yeah. Apparently, I didn't realise we'd taken a break from cinema for a couple of years. But because of the pandemic, a lot of people didn't really notice.
That's a shame. That's a shame. Imagine that. Imagine coming back to an interview. He's like, "Oh yeah, well, I've actually taken a break for the past 2 years." And interview's been like, "Huh? Have you?"
I've had an interview. I'd be like, "To make more Jump Street films."
Yeah. Are we working on scripts, or what are we doing? Is it chef school? Is it FBI school? What's happening?
Was there not talk at one point? Yeah, 21 Jump Street, Men in Black crossover.
Yep, that was supposed to be the next Men in Black film, and then they went with the Men in Black International instead, which was not a good sequel.
It was not a good sequel.
Yeah.
It didn't look it.
It wasn't.
Actually,
it's going to bring us full circle a little bit here regarding sequels. Grease 2 is also a great sequel.
Never seen it.
I've
heard it's bad.
Sure. I really hate it. I absolutely hate it.
I mean, John, how can you go wrong with it? In the first one, you've got this love story about the Australian student and John Travolta. He's a cool kid. She's kind of the preppy kid, and they get together at the end. Why not have reversed that in the second one and have Michelle Pfeiffer as the cool kid, and then you've got the foreign student, make him English this time because we can't do another Australian, but have him related to Sandy for the first one. But obviously she can't have American relatives, so it has to be foreign, but it's a different country, and turn them into a motorcycle vigilante to try and win her love.
And I will never forget that song Reproduction that they sang with a biology teacher. It's somewhere in my brain every so often. My brain just goes, do you remember that song from Grease 2?
My favourite bit in Grease is also the Who's That Guy song, but it's when he finishes the song in his head. Now I'm quite happy for people bust out his songs, they finish each other's lines in that. But the Simon they all sing, Who's That Guy? The Man in the Psycho. And he cuts to him in his head, he goes, what would they say if they knew it was Michael?
And it's that type of quality writing that makes you wonder why it just didn't perform as well as the first one. Before we finish up, another wee sequel news actually that I don't know if any of you saw this week that nobody else gives a fuck about apart from me. Tom Hardy posted on Instagram that he's finished the script for Venom 3.
I didn't see that.
He has the name. He just has Venom. Then he drew a little Venom on the script, an outline of one, and so that seems to be definitely going ahead as well. So I just disappoint cinema lovers, but it's happening.
I liked Venom. I liked the first two Venoms. I thought the second one was more fun, although it was very short. It was a lot more fun than the first one. It was just over the top.
I like them.
I'm here for more Venom.
Yep, I like them. So on that happy note, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We promise we're going to get back at this more regularly. If you want to get in touch with John, you can do so through the email podcast@moviescramble.co.uk. His inbox is looking a bit lonely, but that's because we've not been podding recently. And you can obviously catch us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter @Moviescramble. But until next time, it's bye from all of us. Bye.